KD versus Giannis, Cade Cunningham versus Tyrese Maxey. You saw stars of old and new shining tonight. We'll break it all down on tonight's episode of Locked On NBA Game Night.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
What it do? Welcome to Locked On NBA Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the now #1 sports podcast network out there, your team every day. I'm Camille Davis, co-host of the Locked On Bucks podcast, joined by Swiper Cam of Locked On Nuggets, and we appreciate you for tuning in and making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube, and today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Swiper, there is a lot to talk about tonight. A 7-game slate in the NBA. We had comeback wins. We had back and forth affairs. We even had a few blowouts, but ultimately we have a lot to talk about. So let's start with that superstar battle I mentioned between Giannis and Kevin Durant. That did not disappoint. Rockets leave Milwaukee with a 122-115 win. KD finished with 31 points, 7 assists, 3 boards. Meanwhile, Giannis continued just putting up some monster numbers. 37 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 assists in the loss. But the part that's interesting to me is that before we started recording, there was another name that stood out to you in particular, Mr. Alperen Sengun, who finished with 23 points, 11 boards, and 7 assists. In a game when you have the star power of a Kevin Durant and a Giannis, what about Sengun's game stood out to you in this one?
Well, Sengun's been the best player for the Rockets this year fairly easily. And, I think he's really been associating himself with like some of the great center play in the league. And one of the reasons when he went to Eurobasket this year, there was just a level of aggressiveness that he really showed throughout the tournament, but also one of the things that he added to his game was this 3-point volume, and he brought that into the NBA as soon as he played OKC in Game 1 in the regular season. And so he's just been a different kind of player this year. A lot of Houston Rockets fans, they really have been talking about this leap coming from Alpi, and he's obviously very well loved. Obviously Tukie loves him. He just has a lot of skills in his bag, and I think one of the biggest testaments to it is you get to the end of the game, and Giannis Antetokounmpo is obviously one of the best wing off-ball defenders in the sport and has been for a decade now, but Alpi gets him on an isolation full court, and to see a center be able to have the ball skills to be able to dribble around Giannis tries to go for a steal twice, misses on the last one.
Didn't like that decision.
Yeah. Well, and we'll talk about that, I imagine, when we get here in a minute too, Camille. But I think that just speaks to Alpi. What do you mean? Giannis can't rip a center, and then not only did he not rip him, but he spun off him, and then got a spin on Miles Turner and one finish. So it just there's not a lot of players that can do that are that size. So for me, I'm so impressed with how he's played, and I honestly think he could be the catalyst for the Houston Rockets. A lot of people thought they would drop off after Fred VanVleet falling off, but this still might be a conference finals worthy team with Alpi at the center of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with the way that they be crashing the boards. They embarrass the Bucks on the boards, of 50-27 rebounding advantage for them in this one. And the craziest part is the Rockets had 20 offensive rebounds.
Yeah.
The Bucks had 20 defensive rebounds in the game. And I agree with you on Sengun and how he played. I also thought this was Kevin Durant's best game in a Rockets uniform so far. Down the stretch, they put the ball in his hands and he made the right decisions, whether it was dishing it to somebody else or going up for the bucket. He was there. And I think that his gravity alone has created so much for other guys on this team. Sengun's a guy who I feel like is taking big, just advantage of this newfound space that he's seeing in front of him. But I agree with you on all of that. The game on the Bucks end, it was so irritating because it felt like a game that the Bucks had. I mean, they were winning for most of this game. And then you get into the fourth quarter where down the stretch, the Rockets go on what I believe was a 22-7 run to end the fourth quarter. Like, the Bucks just collapsed. Too many turnovers. It was a tale of two halves for them, where in the first half you see it's like, hey, the Bucks caused 12 Rocket turnovers. They got 21 points off of that. And meanwhile, they only turned the ball over 4 times. Only 2 Rockets points second half. The Rockets turned the ball over only 6 times, leading to 9 Bucks points. And the Bucks turned the ball over 9 times, leading to 17 Rockets points. Everything just seemed to get in the mud for the Bucks down the stretch.
Yeah, it's down the stretch that's gonna be issues, I think, for the Bucks all year. I've been going back and forth, Camille, with a lot of people about this Bucks team. Coming into the season, I just don't. Everybody's healthy. I just don't think it's a top 6 seed. But it's just I don't trust the roster around Giannis, obviously. But they performed well in terms of their win-loss record so far. But Giannis, a down stretch of games, we saw it today. Whether it's turnovers, missing shots, or whether it's just missing free throws. He can't do it all himself. He's going to need, especially I think, a little high-level player like a guard in particular to help him. Do you feel like, as dominant as he's been this year, which is, he's maybe been the best player in the world to start the year off, obviously. He's been incredible. Did you see maybe some shortcomings down the stretch with how Doc was utilizing Giannis? Would you have liked to see them help him a little bit more down the stretch?
Yeah, down the stretch, I thought if anything, Doc had the starters in just a little too long, and then down the stretch, they were kind of gassed and making poor decisions. I felt like he's done a better job of trying to stagger Giannis and Miles Turner a bit more to make sure one of them is always on the court.
Yeah.
The guard play has actually been all right for the Bucks. Like, Ryan Rollins is really showing some things right now, and I think once Kevin Porter Jr. comes back, he has another dynamic guard to the room. My biggest concern for the Bucks roster has been since the offseason, and that's just size on the wing.
Yeah.
And they're just a little bit small running with that trio of, Rollins right now, Gary Trent Jr. and AJ Green, just a little too small. And I think ultimately, like, if the Bucks jump, I think they can still be a top 6 team as currently constructed. But if they want to take a jump and be like a real contender, I think they're going to have to make a move to get a wing player in that's going to be very playable for them going forward. But still a lot more to break down from that game. We can't spend too much time on it, though, because we had the defending champions. They had a scare with the Grizzlies tonight. The Thunder came out with a 114-100 victory because the Bucks weren't the only ones to let a lead slip away tonight. The Thunder had a slow start, but they were ultimately powered by SGA going off for 35 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists. You had Chet out there looking good. You had AJ Mitchell out there looking good. Isaiah Hartenstein was looking good tonight too. And the Thunder just never seemed rattled, even when they started with a 19-point deficit in this game. The Thunder won the second half 63-38. And when I saw this game, I thought about the comments that SGA made about not loving the way that the Thunder played in the playoffs and how they feel like there was other levels to hit. It feels like this is a Thunder team, even though it's shorthanded right now without an all-star, that has a chip on their shoulder with something to prove.
Yeah, I think, they're still so young and they're developing and they're all trying to find new ways to expand their games. I think the tale of this season for them has, beyond SGA, it's been AJ Mitchell. The fact that he's been able to turn in, as many Thunder fans are calling Sam Presti a genius. I'm talking about this is like highway robbery on the other end. AJ Mitchell signed a 3-year, $9 million deal. If I'm him, I'm kind of looking at that. I'm just like, man, I can't believe I'm playing this well and I'm making $3 million this year. But, it's just the NBA. He'll get his pay, at some point in time. Lord willing, he continues to stay healthy and plays at a high level. But the fact that SGA is able to have another backcourt guard besides Case and Wallace, that can really handle a lot of the responsibilities, whether it be dribbling, creating, penetrating. And honestly, even last year with J-Dub, as great as J-Dub is, 3rd-team All-NBA, 1st-team All-Defense, well-deserved. I think he will be a MVP caliber player in his own right at some point. AJ Mitchell gives them a true guard that can beat you off the bounce. And that, I think, is going to make a big difference for them this year, and especially getting to the playoffs. Because now, if you want to put Alex Caruso out there, what AJ Mitchell also showed today is that, like, if SGA is, like, driving the engine, well, you have another guard that I think can do this at a high enough level to really assist and help him. And then on top of it, Isaiah Hartenstein, they just had a 30-17 game, 33-17 game the other day, and today comes back with 18 points and 13 rebounds himself. And then you couple that with Chet Holmgren being one of the best 5 best defenders in the sport. yeah, they're still going to be a tank. They're 10-1. They're probably even better than they're performing right now, which is interesting, obviously, and should be scary for the rest of the league. But I'm actually really excited to see how this Thunder team continues to evolve and grow over the year. And I think today was a testament that even when the shooting and stuff is not going well at first, they still have that thing they can tap into. And it's ultra uber aggressive defense, force turnovers, rebound the basketball, get out in transition, and then they're just able to kind of shot hunt down the stretch of games with SGA's middle of the floor brilliance that he has when he gets to his spots and rises up over you. So just a great basketball team. And then the Memphis Grizzlies on the other end, they just seem to be collapsing all over the place. And Ja Morant, obviously, with everything that happened last week, 11 points, 8 assists, 3 of 18 from the field. It just looks like that chapter is getting ready to close for Memphis.
Yeah, it's disappointing, right? Especially when you think about the fact that these are two teams that met in the playoffs last year, and was it game three? That's when Ja got hurt. They had the big lead in the first half. Ja got hurt. Second half, they melted down. They lose the game, and there was conversations afterwards about like, we were healthy, it would look a little different, and it's like they were pretty healthy tonight in the sense of Ja Morant's out there. You got Jaren Jackson Jr. out there. And it was a struggle for them. Like, they built up some good work, and then in the third quarter, it just all came undone. Like I said earlier, the Thunder never really seemed to be phased in this game, and you saw it pay off for them in the end. But there was some real gritty play happening over in the Eastern Conference tonight. It felt kind of like, okay, we might get like some 90s feels, a little bit of the 80s feels over here in the Eastern Conference a little bit. So there's a couple of games that came down to the wire in Philly and Orlando that we have to discuss right after this. But first, a word from our friends over at Robinhood. Your ambition just met its match. With Robinhood, you play for the win, not just on game day, every day. Locking in on every opening, beating your PR, then beating it again. Channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks and EFTs, options, futures, and crypto all in one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of the new Robinhood strategies with a tailored portfolio managed by a team of experts. You expect more from yourself. Expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. And also a word from Game Time, because basketball season is here and nothing beats being in the arena for the games. And let's be real, sometimes getting tickets can be a headache because you got to deal with like waiting in queues. Sometimes you get hit with surprise fees. Sometimes the price even jumps right before you get a chance to check out. So it's pretty easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer on your team. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I am a proud, cheap person. Okay. When you see me out here in these streets looking like I'm having it, it's on a discount. It's on a budget. And Game Time helps me continue to live that lifestyle, because what you see on Game Time is what you pay. No hidden fees at checkout. And you can even find NBA tickets for under $25. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. All right. We want to thank you for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen of the day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Special shout out to all the everydayers who tune in Sunday through Monday, every day of the week for game night. And also, shout out to the road dogs, because the Pistons left Philly with a win and the Celtics left Orlando with a win of their own. Let's start with that Pistons game, because the Pistons and the Sixers were going blow for blow here in that fourth quarter. Pistons come out with a 111-108 victory. And with that win, the Pistons have now won 6 straight games to move to 8-2 on the year. Cade Cunningham had 26 and 11 in this game. Only 2 points at halftime. You had Jalen Duren come through with 21 and 16. Tyrese Maxey had 33 and 7 for Philly. But let's hear from Locked On Pistons host Kuka Hill about this big win from the Pistons because it was one of them ones.
76ers, they've won 6 straight games and extend their lead in the Eastern Conference as the number 1 seed. Host of the Locked On Pistons podcast, Camille here. Cade Cunningham, 2 points in the first half. Starts off 1 of 9. But as we have seen all season long, comes through in the second half, gets better as the game comes on, and he has been the clutch player of the year so far for the Detroit Pistons in the NBA. He's averaging 11 points in the fourth quarter. In the second half, he's averaging 18 a game on around 60 true shooting. He's been absolutely tremendous in the fourth quarter. Has a poster on Andre Drummond, then comes down, hits a spinning fadeaway mid-range to put the Pistons up by 3 with around 16 seconds left in the game. That did it. That was the dagger. They ended up winning this game. Jalen Duren plays well. Asar Thompson plays well. Duncan Robinson, Karis LeVert play well. But the story of this game is that the Pistons superstar is looking like an MVP when the games matter most. This is now like the 5th game. He's helped close out and shut the door on these teams. Cade is your clutch player of the year so far. He's balling out.
Woo! Listen, I'm not mad at Koo for feeling the way that he has or does because the growth in Cade Cunningham's game has been real. What has stood out the most for you in watching how Cade has developed? Like, this is the same guy who was on these Pistons teams 2 years ago that were setting NBA records for losses. And now he is somebody who down the stretch in the fourth quarter, the Pistons can depend on. He had that poster over Drummond, the and one at the end of the game. Then he had the double team. He spun away from the double, hit the midi fade from the free throw line. Like, his game has just seemed to elevate. What have you seen from Cade Cunningham, especially this season?
Well, I think Cade has always gotten this rap where people have looked at him as a not winning player. And I remember 2 years ago, in particular, I was arguing with people about Cade, and they just felt like, well, he's inefficient. The numbers say 22 and 6 or whatever. But if you look at like how they're performing on the court when he's there, and all, I just thought like the situation with him was just, it was horrible. And obviously they went through a really bad coaching stretch there for a little bit. And then I think now they've been able to reestablish their identity. They truly believe in what's being fed to them every day in practice. And I think Cade Cunningham has been able to take all of the things that he's being taught by JB Bickerstaff, and he's implementing them, being aggressive, going back towards the rim, being able to be a really good playmaker. He's setting the table like early. And I think one of the things about playing point guard in the league is pace and control. And when you're controlling the pace and then you're in control of what the offense is doing, then you're dictating turns for the defense. And that's what Luka Doncic in particular has done his whole career. And I think Cade Cunningham is doing that in his own right. And I think the reason why you see Jalen Duren playing as well as he is because Cade Cunningham is playing as aggressive and as sound as he is. That two-man game they have has become one of the best in the sport. And Jalen Duren is still extremely young. I believe he's turning 22 like soon, if not like just turned 22. But 21 and 16 from him, and then 26 and 11 assists from Cade Cunningham. I think that Cade's assertiveness has helped him this year. Cade's confidence in the playoffs last year. I'll say this again, Camille. I said this last year. If Tim Hardaway Jr. gets that foul call in the corner when he got fouled at 3, they're up 3-1. They might win that series. And Cade Cunningham is moving on to the second round. I think that last year he got the chance to see in a playoff setting the things he does well, the things he doesn't do well, and I think now he's been able to take that next step in your game. And as you know, when Giannis first took that step, that first playoff you get into and you really get into the mud, it changes you. And I think Cade saw, this is the level that I need to get to, this is the level that I want to get to, and then he's committed to doing everything he needs to do to get to that level. And I just love that he's being so aggressive to start the year off.
I do too. And I also love from Duren, like even his playmaking, like in the short roll, like he's just improved in a few different areas and it's combining just to make a lot of magic, it feels like, in Detroit. Here's something interesting about the Sixers before we move on to the next game. Tony Jones posted this. He mentioned the fact that 9 of Philly's 10 games this season have gone to crunch time. And when you look at what their schedule brings over the next 8 days, they have the Celtics, the Pistons again, and the Clippers. So like they are going to continue to have some tough battles here, but this is a team so far that's been in the clutch, and they've been finding ways to come out on top. Just weren't able to capture that very same magic tonight against Cade Cunningham and the Detroit Pistons. But we also had The Celtics and the Magic, run it back type of game because they just played each other on Friday, I believe it was. Celtics get the better of the Magic in this matchup, coming out on top 111-107. Let's quickly hear from Locked On Celtics host John Corrales after this Celtics win that featured some big buckets from some unlikely names throughout the course of this one.
Celtics get their revenge against the Orlando Magic. I'm John Corrales of the Locked On Celtics podcast. Celtics bench has not exactly been a strength for them this season, but they came up huge in this game. Starts with Anthony Simons, scored 14 points in a row for the Celtics in the second quarter, 25 points in the first half. That was all of his scoring, but they needed that to flip a 12-point deficit into an 11-point lead. Then the teams go back and forth, and Luka Garza comes out of nowhere, getting a ton of offensive rebounds, putbacks, drawing fouls, getting to the line. Then Jordan Walsh saves his season with his stretch of recent play. This was his best game maybe ever as a Celtic. 3 steals, a couple of three-pointers, including the dagger at the end in the corner. That's incredible. He even got a little bit from Hugo Gonzalez with some nice offensive plays, a nice assist off a slow foot drive. It was just a wild bench performance for the Celtics, something you don't usually see. You get a pretty decent game from Jaylen Brown. Derek White snapped out of his funk. That's nice. Celtics get a much-needed win here against the Magic to get back in the win column.
Now, there were a lot of names there that John mentioned as contributors in this win for the Celtics. Who impressed you the most in this one? Because for me, it was Anthony Simons. I know he did not score in the second half, but to see him score 17 straight points, 25 points in that first half, the most ever on record, I believe, by a Celtics reserve, it was impressive just seeing the shot making that was happening for Anthony at that point. What about you? Who stood out to you?
Yeah, it's Derek White. I think one of the things about Derek is he's not having the season that a lot of us predicted that he would have to start the year off, just especially given the higher role and usage he would have. Mm-hmm. But the fact that he has as many defensive responsibilities as he does, I mean, he's getting isoed with Paolo Banchero, like, at the end of games, then he's having to switch between Suggs, switch between Bane. And then on the other end, like, Jaylen Brown towards the end of the game, money's on the line. Like the game can be lost or won right here on this possession, and Brown gets doubled, and the Magic execute their defensive scheme really well. Mm-hmm. But then again, it's just the way you have to leverage the court correctly versus the Celtics, because they always have shooters on the perimeter. They get the ball to the top of the key. Derek is there, wide open. He moves into the right spot. And again, just as he did in the NBA playoff multiple years, he's able to put the game away with the three-pointer. So I just love the fact that he's a veteran. He's smart. He knows what he's supposed to do, and he delivers when the team needs him the most. And he's done this throughout the playoffs and the finals. So I just thought that kind of momentum-shifting play and to recapture the game, that was big for why they won today.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with you on that one. And, we got some blowout losses to discuss up next, but also just a loss for the entire basketball world. So there's still so much to discuss on Locked On NBA Game Night right after this. First, a word from our fans over at FanDuel, because the NBA is back and there is no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So even if you missed the start of a game or you want to just ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at an even bigger payout. It keeps every single game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. The Minnesota Timberwolves defeated the Sacramento Kings 144-117. Anthony Edwards had 26 points, 5 assists, 5 boards. Jaden McDaniels shot 80% from the field and dropped 21 points of his own in this one. You had 5 other Wolves players score in double figures. And with this loss, the Kings have now lost their last 2 home games by a combined 58 points. The Wolves did what they were supposed to do in this game against the Sacramento Kings team that has been reeling. They have played 10 games so far. They've given up 120 points in more than 7 games and given up 130 in more than 4 of them. Let me just ask you this quickly, because I know you're also a Western Conference host. What's the path forward for a Sacramento team that was surprising the league just 2-3 seasons ago at this point? Because it does not feel like the current construction of this roster is going to lead to anything fruitful.
Yeah, I'm not super hopeful about the Kings. I did not believe in their roster construction last year. I don't believe in the vision of the organization. You know, Keon Ellis is in a really weird spot where he's not getting playing time. They're benching him for different lineups. And some of that is like, you know, Russell Westbrook obviously played really well this year. And so they figure like, hey, you know, we need to have if we're going to put a guard in, you know, we're going to trust him to be able to deliver in a lot of those minutes. And then on top of that, they got Malik Monk. So it just doesn't make sense. Their roster is like busy, but it's like when somebody's busy, but it's not productive. Like, yeah, you got Precious Achiuwa,
yes,
Domantas Sabonis, DeMar DeRozan, Dennis Schroeder, Zach LaVine, and then you're bringing Eubanks off the bench. They're playing Russell Westbrook, Malik Monk, Devin Carter, a top 10 pick, not getting time. Keon Ellis, one of the best 2 guards, I think, in the league, not getting time. And then you got Nick Clifford, who's your rookie, who's getting minutes now. So, like, you got, like, older vets that are in their 30s that are established, and then you got younger players that need to be developed. Keegan Murray, and then you have Devin Carter, and then you got Nick Clifford, and then Malik Monk's in between there, and then between there, then you got Keon Ellis, and then somehow between there, you got Russell Westbrook, who's just trying to play basketball and continue to play basketball at a high level because he wants to play. But, like, what's your goal? Like, what are you trying to obtain with the roster you have? So, for me, I feel like this is just nails on a chalkboard for Kings fans. Kings fans don't even believe in the vision that the ownership has put out in front of them. But I don't know if they're ever going to be in a place where they know we have to rebuild and we need to deconstruct altogether, because what's happening is they just keep adding more players to the mix, and they're just not making the right decisions with how to actually build a franchise.
I definitely agree with you on that one. And you also had the Warriors come through with a blowout win of their own over the super shorthanded Pacers. They won 114-83. Overall, a good win for the Warriors, who are without Steph Curry, who has now missed 3 straight games with the illness. You had Jimmy Butler come through, 21 points, 9 boards, 7 assists, led the way from the Warriors. I do actually want to pull up a clip from Locked On Pacers host Tony East about this shorthanded loss that the Pacers took to the Warriors.
Locked On Pacers. No, that is not a misspoken sentence. 83 points for the Pacers, who had 62 after like 30 and a half minutes of this game and were up by 1 and looked like they were going to be the Chase Center spoilers again, and they splashed in some threes to start the second half. And their offense just died on the spot, and the Warriors' offense exploded, and it was never close basically from the start of the fourth quarter on after the Warriors went up 10. Pacers offense is a mess, and look, this game totally makes sense. Aaron Nesmith didn't play. He was hurt. They rested Pascal Siakam on their third back-to-back. He's like 12th in the league in minutes. I get all that, even though it's not great to see a player resting this early in the season. They got smoked, right? They got absolutely smoked. Andrew Nembhard had some nice moments. Jay Huff had his first career double-double. Monte Morris had some nice stats, but really the Pacers just can't score. This was their worst shooting percentage game since 2021. I keep tracking their shooting percentage, and it keeps being bad. We'll have much more on the 1-9 Pacers on Locked On Pacers.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough to overcome there for the Pacers. Real quick question for you on this one. Post-game, Steve Kerr said that he doesn't think that they've played well so far, but he's still confident in this Warriors team, that he can picture what this team is and he can see what they're going to be, but they don't really have their identity yet. Do you agree with that assessment thus far through the season for this version of the Golden State Warriors?
Yeah, I mean, the identity is Steph, obviously, but the version of what this team will be is going to take time, maybe just because they just got Jonathan Kuminga back not too long ago. He has been very hit or miss this year. This is back-to-back, maybe back-to-back Denver. This game, not great game for Jonathan Kuminga. You know, Quentin Post is starting in this lineup today. Then Draymond was starting at the 5 before. Trey Jackson-Davis has been in and out of the lineup. Al Horford's here, but he's new. He needs to be able to play with his team more. You know, and then you got like Buddy Hield. So it's just, The Warriors, when they're fully healthy, they're going to be really good. And when they're fully healthy, they're going to be able to beat almost anybody in the league. But I think the problem is that, like, because of their age, their injury concerns, and also just the depth of the roster, outside of Steph and Jimmy, you just don't have a guaranteed score, that you can get not just points from, but even just threaten your offense. So, and Jimmy Butler is obviously not who he was 2 years ago, when he beat the Milwaukee Bucks, in the first round of the NBA playoffs. So
I remember that well.
Yeah. I mean, I forgot. Yeah, 56 points. You are very, very aware of that. But
very well.
I just don't know if I don't know if they can reach that point. But it doesn't matter. Today they get a win, and I think that's the biggest thing about early season. Can you get a win? Can you reset? Can you take a breather? You get a win and you move on. And the Indiana Patriots, on the other hand, they're reeling because they just lost. They lost Aaron Nesmith, who came off a really good game versus Denver, lost him in the game, and then now they come back, and then they can't play the next day versus the Warriors. So they just can't catch a break right now.
Yeah, it's tough going for the Pacers right now. But I like what you said about the early season being about just getting wins. And that is what the Knicks did. They blew the brakes off of the Nets, beat them by 36 points, if my math is correct here. Like, I don't know how much more there is to add to that outside the fact that, this is the Knicks' fourth win in a row. They moved to 6-0 at home. Now, all three of their losses so far have been at home. One thing that I will say about this game, because the Knicks offense was humming, you had Karl-Anthony Towns, making a splash in this game with 28 points. You had Brunson and OG with 19 points of their own. Bridges had 16. Like, the offense was humming. But at half, I was a little concerned for that defense. They gave up 60 points to the Nets at half, but only gave up 38 points to the Nets in the second half. Just overall, a professional win for the Knicks, where they tightened up themselves to make sure that this was going to be a comfortable victory for them.
Yeah, I like the way the Knicks are building. I like the way their team looks. I love the fact that Mike Brown is utilizing the rotation the way that they are. I think having, we saw it today, having Jordan Clarkson coming off the bench and Josh Hart, they just have they have actual viable options and that do different things. And that's one of the things about playing in the NBA now. You have to have lineups that do different things, and you have to have versatility. You got to have different ways you can attack defenses, deal with ball pressure, all those things. And so I just like the way that they're integrating all the players they have on the roster now. So it should be fun. New York Knicks fans, they should be excited. Last year, made it to the conference finals, and I think it was a big moment for them. But I think this is a year they legitimately could make the NBA finals.
They could. That East is pretty open right now. So as we wrap, cannot leave this episode without paying respects to Lenny Wilkins, who passed away today. He is known as the godfather of Seattle basketball. And when you look at his resume, you can see exactly why. Led the Sonics to their only NBA title. And he was just an ambassador for Seattle basketball for over 50 years. Passed away at the age of 88. It's a big loss for Seattle for sure, the NBA, just fans in general. I want to send condolences to his loved ones and all those who knew him, cared for him. It's always tough losing somebody, especially when there's such a legend in the sport.
Yeah, Lenny Wilkins, depending on the background you come from, he is a very well-respected man, very, very well-remembered man, and revered for who he was in the league, who he was as a coach, the things that he stood for off of the court as well, and the fact that he was able to make the Hall of Famer both as a player and as a coach. It's always been a big thing. And then the amount of games that he coached as well. I mean, he just is very well seasoned, had a lot of people that he impacted over the course of his career, literally thousands of people that he impacted. And so we will obviously miss Lenny Wilkins, and obviously just thinking about and praying for his family, obviously, as he transitions.
Absolutely. Somebody who was named one of the league's greatest 75 players and one of the league's 15 greatest coaches of all times. A true legend. We respect all of y'all for listening to Locked On NBA Game Night tonight as well. We appreciate y'all for that second listen. Make sure you checked out Locked On Fantasy Basketball to get you right for all of your leagues with all of the tips and tricks that you will need to succeed. For Swiper and myself, we'll catch you later.